Us today and welcome to Owning Your Personal Brand. This week, we're going to do something a little bit different. If you've been listening in week by week, you'll remember that I like to focus on some of the higher level things as it relates to personal branding. That is getting to know yourself better, really understanding your niche, and some of those strategic things. But today, we're actually going to talk a little more tactical and talk about social media. And we have a wonderful guest with us today to talk about how social media can really help you with your personal brand. So please welcome Jennifer Radke.
Thanks, Amy. It's such an honor to be here today.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're joining us. And Jennifer, if you'll just share with the audience a little bit about yourself, both what you're doing now, but also kind of your journey in marketing.
Yeah, so I've had a very non traditional journey. My educational path or career path actually started in higher ed, sales, and marketing, mostly on the admissions side. And in 2012, I transitioned into social media. I've been growing ever since. I started learning and improving, I guess, not only my personal brand, but business brands. I'm currently the CEO of the National Institute for Social Media, where we do training and certification for marketing professionals across the globe. And then I have the pleasure of talking about different aspects of utilizing social media and strategy in a business environment as well as for personal branding.
Good, good. Well, thank you again for joining us. And we'll jump right in. And I want to talk about brand voice. That is something that is kind of a buzzword, and we hear about it all of the time. But usually we're thinking about it from a company perspective, right? So
Mhm.
different corporations and organizations finding their voice. How would you talk about an individual finding their voice? So before they jump into social media or as they look to get better at social media, what kinds of things do they need to do to really understand what their voice is?
I think the biggest piece, and also somewhat of a misconception, is it doesn't have to be that hard,
Mhm,
right? We just have to look at who we are,
mhm,
what's important to us. Your personality really makes up your brand voice,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
If you are more of a analytical thinker who informs people about information or educates people, then that's your brand voice online as well. If you have humor and motivation or uh, gosh, I don't know, just kind of whimsy, then
mhm.
that's your brand voice. It's to be really true about who are you, what's your personality, and what's of value to you. If you make it something you're not already, it's going to be inauthentic and come across as, cold or disconnected.
Mhm. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, three things I wrote down here: keep it simple, be you, and be authentic. And that's
Yes, exactly.
actually very easy. So we're always making things harder than we need to. That's very easy, but also it's actually very similar to what a brand should do. Keep it
Yes.
simple, stay true to who you are, and don't try to be someone else. So I love that. I appreciate that. Do you think that it is some type of exercise people need to do for their personal brand, or really just like you said, just focus on your own values and who you are and just start actually pushing out content?
So there is some strategy to what we do on social media, especially if we have a goal, right? So if let's just say your goal with being online personally is to network with individuals in a certain industry, then you want to make sure that you're sharing information and ideas that you have that are relevant to that audience, right? So there is a little bit of planning and forethought that should come to this, right? Who are you speaking to? How should you speak to them, right? And then where should you speak to them? Um, it still isn't taking away from who you are and authentically being you, but it's being strategic about what you share and when you share it so that you're reaching your goals. Otherwise, this is where people get frustrated and they say, "Oh, I'm wasting my time on social media." Right, but what's your goal? What are you trying to do there? If you don't know that, then it's going to be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, that is great advice because a lot of times you want to post a lot, but then if you actually take a look back and assess what you're doing, if your
Mhm.
topics are all over the place, then your audience really, well, you might not even have an audience. You'll have people who like certain things, but you don't have somebody who's really following you all the time. That's something I learned just recently is
Mhm.
like pick a niche and really kind of own that and start to educate yourself as well as sharing that knowledge with other people just on a smaller number of topics. So I appreciate that. And then setting goals, that's critical as well because right, what are you doing and how do you know if you're doing it well if you haven't even set a goal? So yeah,
Exactly.
basic
Yep.
things, but things we don't remember or do a lot of the time. So
And it's funny because some of us, even if we're in marketing, right, we do this for our brands,
right,
but when it comes to our own personal brand, we're like, I don't even know where to start.
right, right.
Mm, what's your
Yeah,
goal?
it
Start
is.
at the beginning.
Start with the goal and then keep it simple. Absolutely. So once you have identified that goal, you've kind of thought through who your audience is. How do you determine, or what advice would you give to help people determine what should they post? What type
Mhm.
of content should they be working to post?
So that's a good question. There's a couple of factors at play, right? I kind of briefly mentioned where are you
Mhm.
going to spend your time online? That can dictate what type of content you put out a little bit, right? So if you want to share your information on Instagram, it needs to be visual content. So images, video. On something like LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook, where you have lots of different options, then think through how the information that you're sharing is best communicated. So is it via text, written format? Is it with an image? Is it a video? And I would actually encourage people to think about how they can vary that a little bit because we all get tired of
Mhm.
reading or seeing videos all the time, whatever the case may be. But then the other piece of that is okay, well, should I only share social media content because I am talking about social media? That's what I do, right? No, not necessarily, right? I am more than just a social media strategist and the owner and CEO of the National Institute for Social Media. I'm also a business owner. I'm
Mhm.
also a speaker. As long as it's relevant content to the audience and the conversation to be had, it can be shared. Do I share, soccer games or swim meets on LinkedIn? Nope. Do I on Facebook or Twitter?
Mhm.
Sometimes, because it's part of who I am. It's part of my larger brand. And
Yeah.
it's important for me to share those pieces of who I am as well.
Yeah. And I think it's also just to add to that. I mean, that was great advice, but to add to that, it's also about your audience. And so you
Mhm.
know your audience on LinkedIn is not really coming there to hear about your family life, but your audience on Facebook probably is. And
Yes.
so it's also about knowing like where people are and what they're there for and kind of why they're following you on different channels. So I think that's very helpful. It makes sense. The other
Mhm.
thing I wanted to point out, and we were actually talking about this a little bit earlier, repurposing content, right?
Yes.
So you talked about varying the types of content, but talk a little bit about repurposing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So um, we don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel,
Mhm,
right? What we were talking about is this live
mhm,
is it's a live video that's happening on several streams right now. It will be a podcast
mhm,
uploaded on your different streaming sites there. But we can also have portions of it,
mhm,
quotes, statistics, short video snippets taken out and put into different forms. It
mhm,
could be just taking a quote and putting it in a simple text, adding it to Twitter,
mhm,
or taking part of that quote, putting it in a Canva backing, and now you have an image that's static.
mhm,
So you don't have to reinvent the wheel constantly. You can use the great pieces of information that you've created here or in a blog post or in a webinar and repurpose that multiple times so that you're sharing the content in ways that your audience can absorb it, right? And the more they see things and the different avenues they see things or hear things, the better retention you'll see.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. It's probably, I would argue, one of the most underused tools that we have that is free that we should
Mhm.
all be doing. And I think it's, again, back to what you said about kind of how people consume things. We're going to have this conversation maybe 15, 20 minutes. That might be too long for someone.
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
and so taking out just, I have all these notes I'm writing down, but just taking out certain clips or certain things that may resonate with a person, that one quote or that one piece of advice may resonate. And so I do think it's a great way to keep your audience engaged by just sharing different parts of the content that you create.
Absolutely. And sometimes you can get super creative, right? We might say something today that sparks a question in the mind of one of us or one of our listeners, right? They could put that out on LinkedIn or another platform as a poll
Yeah.
and find out how other people feel about it. So that's a type of repurposing content as well. It's really about sparking that, keeping that conversation going in a
Yeah.
different form, a different medium.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Now let's talk about back to specifically personal branding. What are ways that social media and what you do on social media can help you with building your credibility for your personal brand?
It's such an awesome question. And I think for a lot of people, it may look different, right? Based on what your background is. For someone like me, right, who is a speaker, a business owner, and a social media marketer, social media and my personal brand can help with things like social proof. It
Mm.
shows that I do know what I'm talking about, that other people are willing to hire me and listen to me speak, right? Because I have something to share. If you're a content creator, you can share blog posts on social media and people can see that this is something you do know what you're talking about,
Mhm.
right? Builds that authenticity, but also that proof that goes into it. Um, we want to know that the person that we're hiring or bringing on or contracting with or whatever actually does know what they're talking
Yeah.
about, and social media can really help in doing that.
Yeah.
If you're a consultant and you're supposed to be really great at problem solving and you never ask questions or offer resources or provide advice that's been asked for in a social platform, no one really knows for sure if you're good at that, right? And it builds that credibility. Social also lets you highlight experiences
Mm.
like certification or um, campaigns that you've run successfully, things that you want to feature. So it provides just lots of different avenues to build that credibility and show people you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And the good thing is you're in control of it. I mean, you are in control. It's your social media. So you get to decide what goes on there and have those conversations, initiate those conversations with your followers. So I think that's great what you said. And something that people should definitely remember is that when someone's looking to hire you, someone's looking to partner with you, social is one of the first places they'll go to just check you out.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so you have the opportunity to make sure what they see is a great representation of you. So I definitely like that. One thing I wanted to ask you, in your career, when did you really start thinking about a personal brand? You mentioned you're a speaker, and so at some point you had to really take a step back and think about, who you wanted people to see you as or how you
Mhm.
wanted to be presented. When did you realize that that was a thing, and how did you start to focus on it?
Yeah, for me, it actually was 2012. I can give you a specific date.
Okay.
Um, I was on social before that, right? I had a LinkedIn profile. I had only created a Facebook page because my children's daycare was on it and I wanted to be able to connect with them when I was traveling.
Mhm.
But I wasn't allowed from my previous employer to really do much in social media that related to the work that I was
Mhm.
doing. So I really didn't pay attention, right, to that part of my personal brand until I transitioned out of higher education and into entrepreneurship or business ownership. And that's when I really started thinking, okay, well, who am I? Right? What am I good at? How
Mhm.
can I add value for others? And then where should I do that? Who's the audience I'm trying to to connect with, and and why, right? What's the goal? And that's when I really started utilizing tools like LinkedIn and Twitter specifically to build a community, build my personal brand, and start connecting with individuals.
Good, good. Do you find you have a preference for one channel over the other when it comes to social?
I absolutely adore Twitter, and I know I'm a minority there, but it's easy for me now
Mhm.
to connect with people on Twitter and have real conversation back and forth, and my audience is there,
Mm.
right? Most people hate it because they see all the Kardashian stuff or pop culture or politics. I
Yeah.
don't follow any of that,
Right.
so I
Right.
don't see it in my stream. My stream is overwhelmed with marketing conversation
Right.
and pieces there. However, LinkedIn is a very close second.
Got it.
I will avoid Facebook and actually Instagram to a degree because I don't prefer that type of content. We use it as a business, of course, because
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense, but my personal brand is very underrepresented on Instagram. So,
No, but that's really good because I think I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and it's like, you don't have to be everywhere, right?
mm-mm.
You need to partly identify the channels that you like, because if you like it, you're going to be more consistent and use it. And then also where your people are. So making sure that you can have those conversations, but you do not have to be on every channel.
No, you do not. No, you do not. And, fear of missing out is a real thing.
Mhm.
And I have heard so many times over the years, how can you not be on this channel? How can you not be on that channel? And it's like, look, Snapchat's a great example. When Snapchat first came out, I was with a bunch of marketers at a dinner. We're at the Mall of America, and they want to all take pictures afterwards, right? And somebody says to me, Jen, I can't find you on Snapchat. I said, I know. I'm not on Snapchat. And they're like, how can you be the CEO of NISM and not be on Snapchat? And I'm like, well, hey, when my audience is between the ages of 13 and 18, which was super populated at that time, that age group, I'm like, and they want to talk to me there, then I'll get there. But right now I have no interest. Like,
And it
they don't
goes
want to
back,
talk to me.
yeah, it goes back to the goals. When you mentioned the
Mm-hmm.
goal setting, what are you trying to do? And some of those channels aren't going to really help you meet those goals. So we're all busy enough. We don't need to add to that. So, um,
Exactly.
well, the last question I wanted to ask you is just, what advice would you give? So let's say you had somebody who was a social media marketer, and they came to you just looking for some advice on how they start to really develop their personal brand. What would be a few things you'd share with them from your own experience that you think would help them?
You can't be everything to everyone, is probably one of the first things I would say. The second is one you just said, and that's you don't need to be everywhere either. So really take time at the beginning to figure out where your audience is, what you're trying to accomplish, and how much bandwidth you really have
Mm.
so that you can choose the platforms to have the most valuable conversations on and really build that brand. Um, After that, it's all tactics, right? Like, which conversation do you want to get involved in? Which one highlights your expertise and your credibility? But before that, it's really take the time. Don't just jump in
Mhm.
because it's new or because somebody told you you had to. Figure out what you have the capacity to handle, where you enjoy spending your time, but your audience is also there, and you can have the conversations that are relevant to your brand, and then formulate a plan.
Good, good, great advice. And so before we wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about NISM and what could people find there if they visit your website. What kinds of things will they benefit from if they join that organization?
No, thank you so much. So, the National Institute for Social Media really is designed for social media marketing professionals, right, who are working in the industry or want to be working in the industry. We offer education, but we also have an industry standardized credential. Really, what that means is you take an exam to tell people, hey, I actually know what I'm talking about. Because one of the struggles that I know many of us have is convincing people that we know how to manage social media in a business setting. So there's an exam that assesses folks on their ability to be social media strategists and be strategic thinkers, and then they can earn that credential. Outside of that, we have continuing education. So there's webinars in our on our website where you can come and listen to what's happening and what we're going to be talking about. Update yourself and your learning constantly. We've also got some good resources, whether that be an audit template or a content calendar creation tool. There's all kinds of fun things out there. But my most kind of treasured piece is our community. We really have an amazing group of certified professionals across the country and actually throughout the globe, who talk together, lift each other up, support each other. You were one of our fantastic presenters in a webinar, and I think you firsthand got to see that community. The chat
Absolutely.
box was going like wild because they really are thirsty to learn and support and grow together. So
Yeah.
that's what we really love to offer this community.
Good. Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. Not only the learning, but like you said, it's the helping. So I was presenting, I was trying to keep up with what was going on in the chat, but they are answering each other's questions and really helping each other grow. So it was a good experience. So I imagine the other events you have are equally as engaging and everything. Jennifer, where can people find you? What's the best place for people to follow you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, outside of the National Institute itself, the best place to find me really is on LinkedIn. And I think you've got the contact information there. I am there every day or almost. So if they have questions, I encourage them to reach out, connect with me. I am also on Twitter, which I didn't give you that Twitter handle, but people can find me there. If you search my name, you'll find me.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing great advice and great insights on how social media should be an important part of your personal brand development. I think, as always, just remember that everybody has a personal brand. So whether you want one or not, you have one and you really should own it. And social media is a great tool that you can use. Remember some of the things that Jennifer said: set goals, keep it simple. You don't have to be everywhere and you can't be everything to everybody. Those are a couple of great things that I took from listening to your advice. And so I really, really appreciate it. Thank you again for being here. And to everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed this episode and we will see you next week.